Welcome back to the channel where we discuss horror, scary stories, paranormal, and so much more. Now we're going to jump into the top 3 creepiest camping stories that actually happened. Now before we get started, guys, make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit that like as well. But let's jump into it, shall we? Someone's in the woods. Robert took his son to go out hunting for a weekend. He loved hunting and he wanted to share his passion with his son, 10-year-old Peter. He armed them with Remington rifles and they walked to Robert's regular hunting spot. He figured it's his first time, so there's no need to go deeper into the woods. So they set up camp and they began to wait. It was kind of odd for Robert, though, because there wasn't much game around. They hadn't seen a single animal, and he found that kind of strange. There was a lot of waiting, and when he looked over to his son was yawning and looked like he was getting tired and kind of bored. So Robert packed everything up and told them, "We're gonna move to the next spot." Peter got excited. He's like, "Finally, let's go somewhere else and see if we can get an animal." So as they began to walk, they heard another's footsteps in the distance. Robert signaled Peter to raise his gun towards where the sound was coming from. As they heard the twigs cracking, they saw a man's head pop up from behind a tree. Robert put his hand on his son's shoulder, signaling him to lower his gun. He gave a wave to the guy apologetically, then the guy's head popped back around the tree. Robert was wondering what this guy was doing out in the woods. Was he another hunter? Why was he popping his head out? So to be cautious, Robert and his son turned around to go down another path. They were getting very hungry, so they decided to stop, camp out a little bit, and have some sandwiches, some snacks. As they're eating, again Robert heard some footsteps. Then he saw the same guy's head pop out from behind a tree. Now Robert's getting really annoyed, so he tells his son to wait there. He starts to walk towards this guy behind a tree. The guy's head pops back behind the tree and disappears. Robert stops and gets an uneasy feeling inside himself. Like, what am I doing? My son's here. So he goes back to his son, tells him we're leaving. They pack up their stuff, right? And they continue on the path to head back to their truck. As they're walking down the path, again, Robert hears footsteps behind him. And Robert's getting really angry. He knows this guy is kind of following them. So he turns around, sees the guy's head pop out from behind a tree again. He walks towards this guy, his gun raised, and he tells his son, run back to the truck, take the path. Robert approaches the tree. The guy's head goes back around the tree. As he's approaching this tree, he hears a thud on the ground. He comes around the tree, and his face goes pale. On the ground, he sees a severed head. The head of the man that was watching him. Not wanting to know what the hell's happening, he takes off and runs back to his son. They hop in the truck, and they take off back home, making sure they weren't followed. Apparently, a few hunters and campers had gone missing in these woods, and the serial killer was luring campers and hunters to their death with a severed head. A little bit creepy. Definitely makes me not want to go camping at all. Now we move on to another creepy story, called Evil Entity in the Woods by Jasmine. When I was 17, I went camping with my family. The weather didn't turn out the way we thought it would, so we decided to stay at our family's old cabin. It had been years since anyone has ever been there. The first night we were there, I woke up in the middle of the night, and I saw something in front of me. It was dark, I was half asleep, but I know that I saw something, a shadow hovering over me. Closed my eyes tight, and soon I fell back asleep. The next morning I thought it was just a dream. As I was getting breakfast, I stopped by a mirror to pull back my hair, kind of fix it, and then I saw a shadow behind me. I jumped and turned around, but there was nobody there. I turned back around to look at the mirror and saw in the reflection behind me was a black orb. That's the only name I can think for it. It was black, fairly small, and it was hovering in mid-air. I told my parents that I wanted to leave. I was scared, but they said because of the rain it would be too dangerous to drive, so we had to stay. The next night, I was staying up late with my parents as they were packing things to go. Suddenly, all the lights in the house went out, and it was dark, pitch black. I have troubles walking in the dark because I always seem to get dizzy. While my parents tried to make their way to the light switches, I followed behind them. Suddenly, I bumped into somebody. It definitely was my mom, so I thought it was my dad. But then I heard my dad across the room telling my mom to get my sister. I could still feel somebody in front of me, so I desperately tried to find my dad. I eventually found him and I stayed close. When the lights finally came back on, there was nobody else in the cabin except for us. I told my dad what had happened, and he believed me because he has also been experiencing some weird things that were going on in the cabin. He believed this since he was a kid, since weird things started to happen in the cabin, but he thought it was just his wild imagination. We were set to leave the next day, and my parents started to load up the car. I was on the couch waiting. My sister was already in the car. I suddenly felt something weird. It was like somebody was sneaking up on me. I turned around and saw at the bottom of the stairs a dark mist, turning the corner into the room that I had stayed in. I yelled at my dad. He came running in. I told him what I saw. Suddenly, we heard a loud thumping from upstairs. It was so loud that the lights actually shook in the house. Then an awful, and I mean awful stench came over the whole cabin. It was rotten and foul. The stomping soon stopped and we saw that a dark mist formed by the top of the stairs again. Me and my dad saw it and he grabbed me and we ran out of the cabin as fast as we could. He told my mom that we were leaving instantly. Get in the car, we gotta go. But didn't tell her why. As we got in the car, I looked back through the window to see the mist was still at the stairs but not moving. Like it was just watching us. I don't know what on earth is in that cabin, but I know it wasn't good. It's been 10 years since I've never been back to that cabin. No one in my family has. This next story is a really interesting one. Growing up, the Blair Witch Project scared me. And so when I found this story, I was intrigued. Campers encounter real-life Blair Witch. Lola Swan and Kate Shannon set up their tent outside of the city limits, hoping to enjoy a relaxing night under the stars. But as darkness fell, things started to get a little weird. As they're hanging out at their camp, just watching, looking up at the stars, they decided to hit the hay. It's getting a little late and they're kind of tired. The women, though, became increasingly aware of the feeling of being watched, but were unable to see signs of people or anyone else in the forest. At one point, Kate whistled out, and a few seconds later, somebody else whistled back at her with the same tone from the darkness. Some of their camping tools also seemed to go missing, and as they're trying to get to sleep through the night, they heard twigs breaking, as if somebody was walking around their campsite. So they're in the middle of nowhere. It was a really dense woodland. Terrified though, they started to pack things up, and they fled in terror once they heard a children's laugh coming from the darkness of the woods. It was around 1 a.m., so it was still pretty dark. Their experience though did not end there. As they were flipping through pictures from their camping, they noticed something strange. Lola had discovered an image showing what appeared to be a strange glowing figure in the background. So what was in the woods? Spirits? Was it the Blair Witch? Something more sinister? What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Hopefully you guys enjoyed those 3 scary stories. If you did, be sure to hit that like button and hit that subscribe button so you guys do not miss the next video coming out. And as always, I'll see you in the next spooky video.